Hello and welcome, guys, to episode number 10. It's inaugural episode number 10, and we got today some amazing guests. We got Jay and Warren from Secure Recruitment. So, guys, if you can do a little introduction, obviously, what is Secure Recruitment, so guys, how you come about, maybe how you joined recruitment, and then we'll just dig in a bit deeper.
Well, yeah, I mean, I've been in recruitment for around 27 years now, hence the fantastic head of hair.
Yeah.
Started out within sort of tech recruitment, software development, moving my way into business transformation. And then obviously over the last 7 or 8 years, I've been involved purely within cybersec, infosec. And that's where Secure came about. And obviously Warren has joined me in relation to Secure, but also in launching Cyber Connect.
Yeah. Myself, I've got 12 years worth of headhunting experience as well as recruitment. Originally from the engineering vertical, but transitioned across 6 years ago now, just helping some of my engineering clients bridge the gap between the IT and OT systems, and I haven't looked back since.
Brilliant. I guess, guys, we can delve in a bit deeper straight away because you guys come from recruitment background, and I guess we're seeing kind of it comes waves, I guess, how recruitment or how cybersecurity sort of market works. And I've been talking lately with recruiters how, if you look at, what help you can provide businesses and how, sometimes the I guess not only values, but how things are misaligned between what we see in job descriptions nowadays. So I guess how you guys view in terms of, how can Cyber Connect or how Secure Recruitment potentially can help, potentially clients to, secure great talent?
Yeah, I mean, look, I think in essence, I mean that the whole essence, the point behind sort of Cyber Connect was to sort of work very much in tandem with Secure. I think that some of the biggest challenges we're facing in recruiting sort of cybersecurity talent at the moment is an inability to find the right people with the right skills, and the struggle to keep employees who have those skills, and a decreasing hiring budget, due to sort of economic downturn and boards thinking, more often than not, thinking that they know more about the risk of cybersecurity than they actually do. And I think these are some of the biggest causes cited for many of the current skills gaps. And in fact, around an average of 55% of many of the surveys conducted said that sort of cybersecurity skills shortage and the situation around that has been getting worse and worse in recent years. I mean, look, let's face it, the C-level end of the market has been very choppy during the last sort of 18 months. So I think with roles in this category commanding much higher salaries, much greater responsibility, yet alongside this, we've witnessed a widespread sort of hiring freeze on a lot of senior personnel as the markets sort of recover and restabilize. I think I'd say at least 80% of the senior cybersecurity associates we speak to are definitely disenchanted, and most are highly open to moving roles. I think this is due to sort of factors like pushback from the boards and the businesses as a whole, alongside sort of huge restriction on budgets, which impacts any plans in both departmental headcount growth, future security projects. And I think this has inevitably driven a large amount of competition and cross-fertilization of sort of heads of, directors, CISOs, all fighting over what is a pretty limited amount of vacancies on offer amidst the few openings that can actually be found on the market. I think a lot of organizations have been extremely cautious about spending money due to sort of economic concerns, and have been holding their nerve, if you will, making do with what they have instead. And I think the mood music's certainly been changing slightly into more of a positive tone as 2024 continues in the right direction, for sure. I think if you kind of couple that on a sort of lower end of things, we're looking at sort of recent independent schools council surveys. I think there's around 90%, 91%, I think, believe that there needs to be a push for a more diverse range of people within entry-level roles, of the cybersecurity field. I think the current survey of cybersecurity professionals showed that something like 80% of them were male, 64% of them were white, 89% of them were heterosexual. And this isn't obviously even mentioning the lack of neurodivergent professionals that bring a high level of focus and expertise that are also being chronically overlooked. And I think these differing backgrounds can often bring a unique perspective and approach to any organization. I think it leads to increased innovation and creativity in the field. So a lack of diversity can lead to I think, blind spots in security, which can ultimately be exploited by attackers. I think certainly, what's also clear is that, I mean, many HR departments, I would say, would admit that to being guilty, maybe less so these days, but certainly over the last few years, it is getting better, of excluding strong candidates for cybersecurity jobs due to a lack of understanding of the necessary skills. And it's around 25% have reported that many job postings are very ill thought out, highly unrealistic job descriptions outlining demands for experience, crazy lists of certifications and technical skills. And it definitely creates an impasse in recruiting the correct talent. I think many people believe that job postings should be much more realistic in terms of experience levels of cybersecurity professionals in this current market. It's crazy. And I think, I use examples that we've had in the past with, a lot of the fintech market we've worked with, where you'd be getting a job description and they'd be looking for an information security manager, but there'd be absolutely nothing on the spec about att&ck or cloud hosted infrastructure or anything really, software as a service. They've completely sort of missed all these things out. So we found ourselves offering quite a consultative approach to the clients. One, to save ourselves, having to sort of make sure we didn't waste anyone's time, at least of all the clients, but really kind of making sure that we drilled down on what they actually needed. And yourself, I mean, it's an in-joke within the industry. The amount of certifications that can often go on these job descriptions is just bonkers, and often not really in tandem with the role itself, or have anything to do with the role itself.
Yeah.
So I think by partnering with talent acquisition companies, such as ourselves and experienced search consultants like myself and Warren, and who've got strong knowledge in hiring cybersecurity professionals, companies can definitely increase their chances of not only attracting and retaining top talent, but also ensuring the long-term success of its cybersecurity programs. I think, and I think I'll finish on really that. Personally, I think there's also quite a lot of major issues and multiple disadvantages associated with applicant tracking systems. Integration challenges, limitation on potential candidates, over-reliance on data, alongside individuals being overlooked due to configuration issues. We have it all. And this might sound ironic, but you can never truly replace the human touch. And whilst I definitely see the benefits of AI within cyber, it might not come as a huge surprise in terms of my bias, maybe, that I feel the involvement of using AI to assist the recruitment process will be less helpful.
Yeah. I guess another question would be, it's kind of similar vein to what you just described, I guess, Jay. If we scratch a bit under the surface, I guess the problem is there's kind of probably a twofold problem. One is when people are struggling to measure or assess talent, they resort to certifications. That's one thing. And I think that's kind of a bugbear of mine, because I think, we talked about, if you go towards junior spectrum of the talent, you can't expect them to have A, experience, or B, certifications.
Absolutely.
So normally I think it's between recruitment as well as hiring managers to understand how to measure. Because for me, I always say the two words that begins with A, aptitude and attitude, 100%. Is your key skills in acquiring the key talent. And then secondly, if we go into sort of diversity, I don't like the word saying, people now starting putting diversity quotas, which is, I think, a wrong way to go about, because you can never achieve a quota. I think you just need to think about and broaden the spectrum. And I think that's where the problem is. If you assess your talent purely on certifications, degrees, it becomes harder to bring talent who are not going down the traditional route. And I think that's if we're probably thinking about expanding and bringing more talent, we need to probably diversify the routes and assessment of how we measure the talent. And probably, as you say, getting help from, professional recruitment partners such as yourself can hide A, hiring managers, and B, internal recruiters, how to reach that diverse talent.
Yeah, I think it's just look, everybody wants the perfect match for a job description, but there's been and the reality has been that the cyber market has been so ferociously positive over, you know, the last sort of 10 years. And it's really only probably been in the last 18 months that there's been, you know, some quite unprecedented times, not just in the tech industry, but, you know, really for the first time, cyber's kind of evolved and, you know, it's become much more technical. There's been a lot of releasing of the old guards in terms of the, you know, what you class as the old CISO. I think that, you know, there's been a huge shift in focus of what people are looking for, you know, in terms of what they, you know, from top to bottom. And I think that, you know, the focus on being recognised by underrepresented groups as approachable and credible, you know, acting as positive ambassadors for both personal and corporate brands is important. And I think that, you know, that there's such a huge amount of academic talent that's really desperate to get into the industry, and for all the reasons I've just, you know, laboured on about over the last sort of 5 or 10 minutes, I think that this needs to be, when the markets start to, you know, become more and more robust, when we get back to that very, you know, kind of where everybody's looking to recruit once again, where teams are looking to be, you know, more robust postures are being looked to put in place, where there's much more of a candidate-driven market again, you know, then I think companies need to very much be aware of this and learn from, you know, what's gone before, you know, lowering barriers to entry, reducing sort of unconscious bias, you know, and I think, you know, connecting businesses and organizations sustainably. Which is what Warren's going to talk about, I think, you know, in a little while on the Cyber Connect piece. I think it's all symbiotic, you know.
And just to add, sorry, Mark, just to add,
no, go ahead.
Just to add to what Jamie was saying, there are a lot of organisations that lack the knowledge and the know-how in terms of engaging with underrepresented groups. You know, firstly, they don't know who, where, and what to look for, and that's where we come in, you know, as an organisation and strategic advisors. We facilitate that. We connect organisations with groups with a purpose that can align them, their ways of working, their ways of advertising, and, you know, from the top down, essentially the culture internally, how business can transition from A to B, B being a point of where they can actually attract, engage, and retain underrepresented groups coming into the business and provide diverse perspectives and ultimately drive innovation.
Yeah, I think it's very important. I think, as you guys mentioned, you know, is sometimes people forget that, you know, yes, you can be in security for 20, 30 years and be stuck in your own ways, but bring in talent from, even if it's from other industries, from other types and walks of life, can bring a different perspective, which is sometimes really needed. Now, if we go segue into a bit, I guess, you know, talking about, you know, how we can promote this diversity. So do you think, guys, things like mutual mentoring or networking events can actually help, you know, and potentially reach that diversity of talent?
Yeah, no, that's a good question, and, you know, that's the reason we started Secure Cyber Connect as a community, which is obviously accessible online as well as for application. And, you know, the reason we started is because we were reviewing a few studies, you know, IBM being one of them, of course, and the IBM study suggested that there's a talent shortage, so a diversity gap, which hinders progress. The data suggests that the diverse teams are roughly around like 30% more effective. Now, mutual mentoring as well as, you know, online networking provides a platform to break down these barriers, as well as tackling the biases that Jay mentioned earlier. Now, you know, just on the focus of mentoring, traditional processes of matching mentors and mentees can be influenced by unconscious bias, disadvantaging diverse and gender inclusion. Now, unconscious bias can often favour individuals who share similar characteristics. Good example of that is those that look for ones of cisgender, race, or backgrounds. Unfortunately, this often hinders the creation of diverse mentorship programs, limiting a range of perspectives and experience that mentors and mentees can gain. Now, our program takes that away. There is an unbiased matching process where we match individuals in terms of their aspirations and, you know, their goals, as opposed to where they sit within an organization, which sector they're within. Ultimately, we provide access to cross-sector collaboration. Now, we take all the bias away, providing solutions and mitigates against that bias, ultimately foster inclusive engagement. Both mutual mentoring and the virtual networking sessions that we run help plug the gaps in professional networks, as well as establishing long-term allies and advocates within the industry, which is something that I see as crucially important, especially as we're going through a transition phase at the moment where the skills gap across the board is getting significantly bigger. And those entering the industry sometimes are tempted away into different areas. And I know the UK government have sort of committed some like £25 million to invest within the cybersecurity remit, within the STEM space, and lower those barriers of entry. But there's a lot more organisations can be doing in terms of cross-training and redeploying talent. And there are a lot of quality training providers out there that we partner with that can facilitate that.
Yeah, I think as you say, training, mentoring, I think is very important. But I've been mentoring for the last couple of years, and sometimes I feel like mentoring is not only about providing guidance or providing teachings or technical skills. It's you sort of have to. I think sometimes it's more about psychology other than that, because when somebody, especially when people come from completely different walk of life and they start learning cybersecurity, the first probably weeks or probably even months becomes a very daunting uphill battle. And sometimes when people hit the wall, they give up and walk away. So building mentoring, not only mentoring, but I think what you guys mentioned about community is, and that's why I said even the other day, I said to the guys, I mentioned in my LinkedIn post, is when I think the best thing you can do is when you start working towards cybersecurity is either journaling your progress in LinkedIn, but also getting embedded in community, because whenever you fall, having people around you to pick you up is probably the best feeling. And I guess cybersecurity is probably the amazing industry for that, because there's so many people who are able to help you, because psychologically and sort of mentally, I think it can be daunting when you step into something that's really mentally hard. And sometimes even you can pass certificates, you can do courses, but then battling to get the first job is another battle. You keep getting knocked down. And sometimes I always say to people, you can hear 100 no's, but you only need one yes, and battling for that one yes is the ultimate goal. And as you say, building that community, mentoring can provide amazing value, I guess, to those people.
Yeah, and just on that, it's an interesting thought, and the challenge that we hear quite often, especially with organisations that have their own internal mentoring programs, that there is a drop off of engagement over time. There's also a reluctance for people to actually be honest and fully embrace, because sometimes they feel they're under the microscope from their employer, or even a peer or someone higher up within the organisation. Our aim is that our program can take that away by providing cross-sector collaboration. We're matching mentors with similar experience levels with individuals from different ends of the spectrum in terms of industry. And that's where we see that the value is really going to be brought in. We've had several comments that being said from people that work within much larger enterprises, global organizations, and they're crying out for cross-sector engagement like this. They want to get outside of their echo chamber, because a lot of us are guilty of being within that echo chamber, working within our own four walls and not seeing change outside of that. Our hope is that our programs and our initiatives and our community can break that down.
Yeah, I guess, we talked a bit about obviously junior talent. Now, if we flip the coin and think about, as you mentioned, on the other side, there is obviously companies, enterprises. So how do you guys think that, this community cohesion will help or enhance cybersecurity defenses for organizations? Because I think ultimately knowledge sharing brings everyone's level up. So do you think that?
I agree with you.
Yeah. I mean, look, in terms of, I guess anything from like, board engagement, I think, it's key really that, that as Warren said, the mutual mentoring fosters advisory work within the community. It allows for sharing of knowledge and expertise and so forth. But it's look, bottom line is cyber threats are on the rise. I think there's 75% of businesses and around 80% of charities have experienced incidents in the last year. So it goes back to what we said. It promotes mutual learning and understanding. It's established a community of trust with transparency. It's cultural change. It's all of that kind of stuff. And I think that you know, the whole thing is very much, you know, in tandem with each other. You know, it's key. And I think that, as Warren was, you know, was touched on, that, you know, we've got with the mutual mentoring piece, it's a sort of, it's not about an 8-week program.
Yes, so it's an 8-week program. What we ask from participants is to dedicate a minimum of 4 30-minute sessions across those 8 weeks, because we know a lot of the senior leaders in the space have limitations to their time. But what we have seen in the past when we've trialed this program in the past, that people generally after these 4 sessions like to re-engage, and they put time in their diaries to actually have a weekly catch up. So it's just breaking that initial cycle and the initial sort of, you know, hurdles in front of them.
Sounds brilliant.
And I think, you know, putting those clear goals and expectations, the mentoring relationship is important, the direction, you know, providing resources and support for the participants in terms of facilitating, you know, L&D and all that kind of stuff. And I think, just as we touched on, you know, regular communication and feedback between, you know, the participants is look, the whole thing's about a productive mentoring relationship.
Yeah.
You know.
And you know, as Jay said, it's only one aspect of our program and our community. So the community itself, as I mentioned, is hosted online. I know you're a member, Marius, so thank you for supporting. But there are 4 work streams within that community. So there's the mutual mentoring program, the weekly online networking event, which we can touch upon later, as well as our active directory of trusted partners. We actually engage with MSPs, fractional service providers, as well as areas outside of cybersecurity, in terms of sharpening the softer skills from a psychological standpoint as well as sort of training providers. But ultimately, you know, what we're trying to achieve is community cohesion, you know, bridging the gaps that are in professional networks in terms of cybersecurity, as well as bringing together, you know, a stronger sense of community sharing, because the threat actors out there at the moment are working together behind the scenes. They're sharing their best practices. They're sharing their you know, successful attack vectors. And organizations need to be doing more of that, especially if we're going to, you know, transition into a state that is hugely influenced by AI, you know, for instance, because the tools that they're utilizing at the moment are getting more advanced. And we don't want to be scaring people out of the industry. We need to be sort of pulling things together, getting close and working in close unity. And a lot of the organizations at the top are doing that. And that's where they're seeing success. You know, going back to what we mentioned at the top of the meeting is the diversity piece. And some of the most successful organizations out there and teams have shown, you know, the data is there to back it up, that, you know, they are performing a lot better. Now, we look at studies on a weekly basis. There was one released recently by the World Economic Forum, who anticipate that there's going to be a 20% reduction in the global workforce by 2030. And if you look at the bigger picture, that's influenced by the baby boomer exodus. So I think we were looking at something earlier today, and it suggested 85 million technology professionals leaving the workforce by 2030. With them leaving, we're going to lose the skills, the talent, and the knowledge. So it's vitally important right now that we keep hold of those individuals, and that we put something in place that there can be a knowledge transfer. Just focus on the UK as well, emphasising, you know, the challenge we're facing. Most recent report by the Department of Science and Innovation indicated that there's 50% of businesses have a basic cybersecurity knowledge gap, and 33% have an advanced cybersecurity skills gap. Last year alone, there were 160,000 cyber jobs posts. That was an increase of 30% on the year before. Now, diversity, of course, is something that's an area of major concern. And a good example of that, which is reflected once again in the SIT report, only 17% of the workforce are female, only 14% of that, 17% are in senior leadership positions. It's also estimated there's going to be a shortfall of about 11,000 to 12,000 people in the cyber workforce across the UK. So those roles need to be filled, and that gap needs to be bridged, either by lowering the barriers of entry to people through academia or cross-training and redeploying. Now, where our community comes in is that we work as trusted advisors. We facilitate strategic introductions to empower both individuals and organizations. As community connectors as a whole, we proactively engage with diverse and underrepresented groups to lower those barriers of entry in cybersecurity, and to ensure there's inclusive knowledge sharing throughout. Because LinkedIn, sometimes, I know we're hosted on LinkedIn today, sometimes can be egotistical, a bit of the pointing and negative culture. And we hope that we're developing a safe and transparent environment.
Yeah, I think sometimes, you know, it's I guess it's not it's not the tool's fault, it's how you use the tool. And that's where I think the problem is with LinkedIn. You know, you will normally see, you know, there are proper recruiters and there are lazy recruiters who, you know, find in a job spec that, you know, someone needs a specific skill, Boolean message, make sure A, you got the skill, B, some cybersecurity experience, and send the message to everyone. So, you know, I guess, you know, we touched a bit about DEI, you know, and things like, you know, diversity, inclusion. Yes, that's very important. But I guess even, you know, on a grander scheme, some companies even, you know, can't even get to the word towards diversity. They're struggling to get any talent in.
Absolutely.
So, you know,
Equity is a key
the
point.
companies that face those challenges, how Secure is supporting them and what kind of solutions you guys provide outside of diversity, but just actually getting talent in?
Yeah, I mean, I think, look, I mean, as I say, you know, I think it's all a huge amount of what we do is very much, you know, network driven, you know, and it has been, you know, I think, you know, the whole essence of the cybersecurity, you know, job market is evolving, and you know, it's it's looking at the right talent. It's, you know, obviously AI is going to present new challenges in cybersecurity. You know, we need, you know, people who can implement AI as well as defending against new threats. And we need analysts, we need white hat hackers, we need pen testers, we need application, you know, att&ck. And these skills are in ever increasing demand. So, you know, you've got to be, you know, you've got to be trusted. And I think it's like anything. And this whole thing is very much symbiotic. I don't think that any recruiter or search consultant, you know, has the divine right just to expect to be able to engage within the security community, you know, anymore. I think you need to have been around for a bit. You need to know your stuff. You need to be passionate. You need to be putting something back. You need to have the trust. It's a discerning market, you know, and certainly at a senior level, it's a very, very discerning market. And I think with many businesses lacking, you know, around 50% of them lacking sort of, you know, reporting a lacking confidence in their staff performing even basic tasks or functions that are essential to protecting the sort of business as a whole. I think, there's a huge opportunity there. And certainly I think, you know, when the market's softened, that, you know, in terms of forensic analysis or security architecture or AppSec or threat intelligence or user monitoring. So, you know, you're going to have to really know your stuff. And I think you're really going to have that strong network and outreach and referrals and people that will trust you. You know, it's as simple as that. And I think that, you know, and as Warren touched on before, I think it's important that the people you present to the organizations, and technical skills are not the only major issue. You know, I think, you know, half the cybersecurity organizations are experiencing a soft skills gap, which Warren touched on before, in terms of people who can even communicate to C-suite or the wider business, you know, general leadership or management skills, even sales and marketing to some degree. So, you know, we try and offer more than a one-dimensional approach to recruitment, you know, and as I said earlier, you know, this could be, you know, but no better demonstrated than by working as a true business partner, working with the line managers or HR in terms of scaling up the security teams. I think, you know, making sure that, you know, we're presenting good cybersecurity professionals can, you know, with creative problem solving skills, you know, looking at things through a set of fresh eyes and being able to spot that in people. But I think that it's imperative that you've got the trust. I think that, you know, people, I think that unfortunately you know, a lot of companies hold out for the perfect candidate when the reality is that it might not even exist. More often than not, certainly based on the level of salaries on offer for that role. So you've got to differentiate yourself from the many underskilled and quite reckless individuals, if I'm being really honest, who work within recruitment, and, you know, and the rather disparaging perception of most recruiters from either line manager or HR. I think, you know, and often internal recruiters, you know, there's a perception of external talent acquisition that can be based, probably rightly so, on their own negative experiences. And I think it's really important that you know, like any relationship, communication is key. You've got to be able to work together, and you've got to be able to communicate, and you've got to have the trust. And I think it's not being seen to, you know, just expect the external recruiter or the business part, if you will, to have a one size, you know, fits all mentality, because one size does not fit all when it comes to assessing the impact that, you know, a strong recruiter can make on helping you build a security team, you know. I think there's a lot of young kids in the market who are, working vertical cyber desks with larger companies who've got little to no understanding of the market, are just under pressure to send out endless CVs, regardless of the quality. May not have the ability to sell the role to the candidates correctly in terms of what is the clear criteria of the role, or what high impact work is on offer, or what continued investment in training there may be, because I think once you've sorted out if the money's enough, you're really going to need much more to prevent churn and continuous flight risks as an organization. What's the well-being of the individuals in your company, for example? These things may sound a little, sometimes a little trite, or, but with the younger generation especially, these are really vitally important keynotes. And yet many companies, although they talk a good game in HR, really fail to acknowledge this correctly and ultimately pay the price in both attraction and retention.
I just wanted to touch on that. I think one thing where I wanted to get your views as well, guys, like, I think sometimes where I just mentioned, those messages that are, Boolean search, mass message about, oh, I've got this role, please, reply and I'm going to fill this role. Do you think that some companies are, for the sake of quick buck, overlooking the need for relationship building? And the quick buck, obviously, yes, it fills the role, but it creates an upset potentially client, because potentially that person who's been hired will leave down the road 6 months. And those who are doing it, or who are getting those partners who might doing some, fishy things to fill the roles, are not thinking about the long-term benefit and the long-term, payment. Because normally, there's always a saying, cheap pays twice. So, sometimes, yes, you can get a cheaper recruiter who might be able to fill the role, but without talking about building relationships, talking about how we can, prevent churn and things like that. Companies, I think, are overseeing things for saving a few bucks, but normally that saving of a few bucks means that you will pay twice or 3 times over for that role because you'll need to replace it.
Yeah, and look, there's a lot of truth in that, again, I don't want to sort of, undermine a lot of the industry. The industry there's a lot of really, really good people who work in recruitment. There's a lot of really highly skilled, passionate, knowledgeable people that work in our industry. And I think it's unfortunately, it's cutting through the noise for, and LinkedIn's a great example. Look, LinkedIn really is we're all on LinkedIn. We all use it, and it's a great platform. But there's a lot of detritus on LinkedIn. We're all guilty of clickbait. We're all guilty of putting stuff out there to keep our presence and our brand awareness. It's a necessity of what goes on. But I think that the bottom line of any relationship, and certainly what we're doing with CyberConnect, it's demonstrating your quality and demonstrating, that you're actually adding value, because nothing is more attractive than knowledge and passion. I don't think there is. And I think that, certainly in the industry that, that we're operating in, and it's vital. And I think it's vital that people, it goes back to what I said, it's trust. It's all about trust. If you've got the trust in somebody and just going back to some of the examples I gave a few minutes ago, it's about being able to present, and all the things we spoke about over, the course of this evening. It's being able to present people that may not necessarily on a resume have a screaming black and white tracing paper match, but that they've got the caliber. I've had it with with working with clients, building out SOCs and putting application teams together for financial services companies. There's certain people that sometimes might not necessarily be quite the match, or be quite as on point in terms of the skills required, but they're going to bring something to the team. They're going to bring something to the program, and more often than not, they're the ones that turn out to be the real gem. And we talked about neurodivergence earlier. You put someone in that maybe the company's been able to see past certain things and just been able to sort of look at that person pragmatic, and they've been an absolute rock star. And it's that kind of of unconscious bias, and it's that kind of diversity and equality and all the things we've harped on about, that it's really important that the market starts to practice what it preaches and not just talk it up but then actually kind of reject people because they've not got this or they've not got that. And, you know, it's about actually embracing it, because I think, look, there's going to be a need for it. It's not necessarily been quite as impactful at the moment because we know it's been a relatively lean time in cyber. It's been a correcting of the market. It's been a manicuring of the sector, the industry, but it's coming, and it's going to rocket again. And when it rockets again, and everybody's fighting for, you know, for a limited amount of talent, and as Warren's, you know, a lot of people have had burnout, a lot of people have left the industry, a lot of people are just jaded and disenchanted. Yeah, there's got to be fresh perspective on it, and all of these things, as I said, they link together.
I think it's
just,
yeah.
sorry, and just to add to that, you know, any engagement that we're involved in is always best practice to manage expectations of an organization. The trust is there, but transparency is also important.
Absolutely.
You know, we've got an extensive salary survey that highlights the difference in terms of, you know, across the board, underrepresented groups, as well as different verticals within cyber. That's the enterprise cybersecurity market and go-to-market space. So us providing that transparency and managing expectations is vitally important. One thing we do as a partner for businesses, well, most of the businesses that are happy to take on board our knowledge and best practices, is helping them develop their environmental social governance performance, as well as their employee value proposition. Just going back to what you mentioned earlier, it's important that there's a sustained engagement with talent and that there's a pipeline or a roadmap in place. And the best way to do that is to have that consistent engagement with talent communities, in hope that you can draw from that at pace in the future when the need arises, or plan for that further down the line. A lot of organizations, I'm sure you've been exposed to in your time, Marison, are guilty of being reactive as opposed to being proactive. But fortunately, you know, we're fortunate enough to engage with organizations that are forward thinking and are now, you know, transitioning into planning and putting things in place. And that's where the community and the platform comes in. It's hosting that continued engagement and knowledge sharing and strengthening the wider ecosystem.
Yeah. I think as you say, especially as you, Jay, mentioned, I think it's, you know, sometimes people forget that the need to look past, you know, past the piece of paper, which is a CV, or past the requirements and making sure that every box is ticked is very important. Because, and I say that because, you know, I've witnessed, you know, teams that are potentially, let's say, you know, not working to their best ability or might be dysfunctional, is because people sometimes overlook. Yes, you don't necessarily need to try and get the best talent out there, but you need to get a talent that matches with your team dynamics.
Absolutely.
Because bringing one bad apple will cost you more problems than actually, you know, having less skills. And I think that's very important.
Absolutely, nice, 100%.
I think if we go back to, you know, we talked a lot about, you know, junior talent diversity. Now, if we go up a notch, I guess those people who are not necessarily junior but sort of mid-senior level, and they're thinking as well, you know, how they can advance their careers. You know, does networking in you know, in that level, as well as, you know, Cyber Connect potentially, you know, we're not only talking about mentoring for potential juniors, but, you know, mid-senior people looking to step up into management or maybe even leadership. Are you looking, guys, to expand in that and help people through, you know, through networking to advance their careers as well?
Yeah, that's a good question. And networking plays a crucial role in building both professional relationships and advancing careers in cybersecurity. The Cyber Connect networking event provides opportunities for professionals to connect with peers, industry experts, and potential employers in a structured environment. Anyone can sign up to the weekly networking event. It's a virtual room, it's hosted. So if you sign up, you're dropped into a room with 3 other individuals. It is randomly matched. And it's on a weekly basis. So our hope is that individuals, security leaders who reference can expand their network, because, you know, everyone's got their own black book, but there are limitations to that black book. And our weekly networking sessions help to expand individuals' black books, puts them in groups and circles that they probably wouldn't usually move into, or you have discussions with individuals in different verticals that they probably wouldn't usually typically engage with. Not out of malice, but just because out of circumstance and out of the environments they're in. Financial services, you know, is a space that's heavily guilty of that. They're quite often inwardly facing. They don't take lessons learned away from other sectors and industries. And if you've worked in the financial service sector as a security leader for 15, 20 years, you're not exposed to broader prospects, as well as broader challenges and ways of working. And our hope is that you're bridging those gaps can ultimately take that away.
Brilliant. And now if we segue obviously into, I know you guys looking to expand not only into, CyberConnect, networking, but CyberConnect podcast as well. So what objectives do you think you aim to achieve through the podcast, and how potentially, help, whether it's, hiring managers, whether it's professionals?
Yeah, and that's a good question. As you mentioned earlier, the important thing in the community as a whole is that continued learning and that sustained engagement. We discussed about the importance of that continued learning in cybersecurity, and it resonates quite heavily with not just senior leaders, but individuals that are transitioning into the industry and business leaders. All of our discussions and the research that we find in the studies that we've read through, highlight that as well. People's personal journeys is important. The sharing of guests and their perspective and their journeys is equally as important. We sit on the phone in Teams calls, speaking to candidates and security leaders on a daily basis, and it's fascinating to hear their journeys and their unique perspectives. And we want to bring that to the forefront. We want individuals to be able to stand on our shoulders and use our platform to get their story across, in the hope that it inspires the next wave of individuals to come through, and even inspire individuals to potentially pick up tools and do stuff at home. Something that I often speak about when I attend universities or any of the cybersecurity clusters across the UK is bridging that gap for younger people or even older people. And the best way for them to do that, if they haven't got experience, is actually do some lab work or reach out to the local universities or the clusters and gain an understanding of what knowledge transfer schemes they have in place or what assignments they potentially could work on free of charge, just to gain that experience. And ultimately, help them break into other areas. And just going back to what you mentioned from a leadership perspective, something that we are seeing as prominent in the industry is the lack of soft skills and the ability to influence C-suite and senior leadership. And that's something we need a tremendous lot more of. And where we've seen success is actually bringing people that have more of a business focus into this and matching them with those with more of a technical focus, and for them to rub off on each other. Because it's important, the podcast, the networking, the mutual mentoring is important. It's a mutual exchange of knowledge and best practices.
Yep. And then just to round it up, I guess, we talked a lot about recruitment, the networking and everything. So if you could share, for example, some, memorable engagement with a company that, were looking to solve their talent shortage problems, and, and how you guys helped.
I mean, look, yeah, I think I touched on one earlier. I mean, a specific, well, and this was quite a regular thing actually with for a period, but it goes back to what we talked about with, with regards to job descriptions and things. You're getting a situation where you've got a say, for example, a trading platform, or you've got a fintech, or you've got, a business that requires, and they will present you with a head of information security, and, you look through the spec and you just think, well, it's been clearly, put together by somebody who's, maybe come out of the risk department or something, and doesn't really have an insight into the technical side of it. And it's about working and collaborating with, organizations. And that's not just talking about a head of here, but, from all the way down to even classic InfoSec analysts. It's about, understanding the difference between, almost between, information assurance and cybersecurity and the technical aspects of it, and breaking that down and understanding what's required, in relation to that particular business. And certainly I think att&ck has been a big part of that. People's understanding of that has been considerably improved over the last few years by nature of the way the industry's gone. But certainly, I think you go back a few years, there was a real lack of understanding about, that side of things. And certainly when it came to, hiring managers, and more often than not, as I say, if it was certainly coming through from a HR perspective, so it's important, goes back to having that conversation, speaking to the right people trusting you to have, the conversations, and working as a business partner where, you're allowed access to conversations, because ultimately the end goal is to get the very, very best people and the right people for the team and businesses, that whatever that might be, whether it be a single hire or whether it be scaling up a business. You know, we want to be, we're proud of what we do. We want to be, you know, we want to, you know, what is important to us is that we're, you know, we're perceived as really adding value. Everything we're doing is leaning into that. So yeah, I think, you know, everything we've done, we've tried to take as much pride in as possible. And as you touched on earlier, it's about also not just the placement, but it's the retention. It's about everything that goes with that, you know. The whole thing is very symbiotic.
Yeah, just to add to that, you know, anytime we're involved in a process or even advising organisations from a strategic standpoint, is understanding the why. It could be a leadership position, it could be a security engineering position. What we really want to understand is why. You know, what impact is that individual going to have, not just on the security department, but the business as a whole. You know, how can that individual enable the business or other departments? Then, you know, organisations can successfully go back into board with some success stories and tangible benefits and details to get a bigger budget to get projects moving forward in the future. That's an important thing for us and for all the organisations that we partner with at the moment. And that just sort of, you know, allows us to segue into the CyberConnect directory. That's where we're curating trusted solutions. So that can be anything from training and awareness providers, as well as fractional services. You know, we lower that barrier. We take away some of the downtime that is spent organisations sieving through and potentially going through a discovery stage with one of the big four, because, you know, if those are always the first point of call for organisations that are perhaps going for a transitional period or phase, or looking to implement a new product or service offering. You know, we look to take away that financial burden. We need to reduce that and introduce businesses to small to medium sized enterprises or your independent fractional services. Because at the end of the day, you know, we've worked and recruited for some of the big four. We know that the consultants that they send out to their clients, half the time are actually contractors that they brought in. Is not actually in-house talent. So we can allow access to that talent and allow for businesses to actually innovate at a faster pace at a lower cost, because a lot of the time budget is a major concern for organizations.
Yeah. And I guess just to round it up, guys, you know, after a brilliant conversation. So if people out there, you know, hiring managers or talent potentially found, you know, some of this conversation very valuable, how, you know, potential hiring managers, how potential companies can get in touch with you, how to find you know, CyberConnect networking, how they can find and get in touch and basically engage with you guys.
Well, absolutely. I mean, look, you know, we're on LinkedIn. Obviously, we've got a very client-centric website. I think, you know, we obviously redid our website last year, and we made it very client-centric, very much informative for clients, because I think, you know, website as a conduit for candidates through jobs, and it kind of takes care of itself. I think what was really important when we put the new website together was that the content we put on it was really informative and almost it went you know, in tandem with the drum that we're banging all the time, which is, you know, trying to give as much information as possible, as much insight as possible, as much advice as possible, you know, that's useful. And I think with what we're doing with obviously the, you know, looking to do with the clusters and everything that's coming up, you know, everything, it's really exciting times. There's going to be lots of updates on the website coming up. But yes, you know, with certainly, you know, our LinkedIn and you know, our profile and our brand is hopefully, you know, it's quite prolific.
Yeah, and, you know, just to add to that, in the comment section after the stream, we'll drop a QR code as well as a link to the community. You know, everyone is welcome within the community. We've got several groups that can be joined and hosting micro communities within that. Those groups are sometimes private, but there is the ability for everyone to engage in a communal platform, as well as seeing some exclusive interviews and podcast live streams. As well as some exclusive offers from some of our partners as well. Essentially, it's a non-sales environment, but there are individuals coming in. Anyone that wants to join up in terms of the online networking sessions, I'll also leave a link in the comment section for that. Those networking sessions aren't just for cybersecurity professionals. They are for enthusiasts as well as business and technology leaders looking to get a bit of advice and guidance from those within the cybersecurity remit.
Brilliant. Okay. Well, there you go, guys. That's episode number 10 with Jay and Warren from Secure Recruitment. So thank you very much for tuning in, and thank you guys for coming along with us.
Thank you for having us, Marius. We appreciate it. We appreciate the time you've given us. Thank you.
Thank you, Marius. As always, it's a pleasure speaking with you.
Thank you very much, guys.